Hello guys, and welcome to another episode of Is It Worth It, the series where I share my review and my opinion on different video games that I have experienced. Today, we're looking at the beloved mascot whose popularity skyrocketed within the PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 era. This is of course the crazy spinning Bandicoot known as Crash. Similar to Spyro's Reignited Trilogy, Crash had received a remaster of his trilogy, and in fact it was even prior to Spyro's. In my Spyro review, I mentioned how Spyro was not a mascot that I grew up with, but with Crash, it was a different story. Nevertheless, I played the trilogy without thinking of the past, so this is not a biased review. The game was made by Vicarious Vision and published by Activision. The game was a time exclusive for the PlayStation console, but as of now, it is available in every platform. Upon its release, the game had two versions, Standard and Deluxe, which included a pair of socks for the PlayStation version and a controller for both Switch and Xbox. Similar to Spyro, the game is made out of the three original entries, but this time they were made by Naughty Dog. So in terms of story mode, I'll be reviewing each game individually. The first game introduces the players to the mad scientist called Dr. Neo Cortex, who was experimenting on the wildlife. In the opening cutscene, Cortex was using his Evolorate to change the DNA of the animals into bloodthirsty soldiers to help him conquer the world. One day, Cortex was experimenting on a Bandicoot who would have been his army's leader. The experiments kept going and going with what it seems to be a success. However, one day, Cortex was going to use his brainwashing machine, but Crash Bandicoot was rejected. Crash, lost and confused, escaped from Cortex by jumping off the window. Cortex requested for his minions to prepare him the second Bandicoot, Tonya. Crash washes up in the shores of a small island and commits on saving his friend from Cortex. He is joined by a witch spirit called Aku Aku. Crash ventures around in various of islands in order to reach the Mad Doctor's lab. Cortex becomes aware of it and sends his minions in order to prevent him. The player has to go through 34 levels, fight plenty of boss battles until Crash can clash with Cortex. The second game, Crash Bandicoot Cortex Revenge, picks up where the first one left. Cortex was defeated and was blown away. After he picks himself up, he sees some pink crystals which he seems to recognize and believes they have the power to power up his machine. A year later, Cortex makes his new base outside of the planet with his new assistant, Dr. N. Dr. Jean claims that in order to power up the new and improved Vortex Cortex, they'll need 25 more crystals in order to do it. Cortex was already aware of that and claims that in order to do that, they'll have to use the Bandicoot in order to pick it up for him. Crash was enjoying a peaceful time with his young sister Coco, who wakes him up in order to bring her batteries for her laptop. Crash searches to collect them but finds himself in an ancient warp room with access to various of worlds. Cortex appeared as a holographic projection and tells Crash a fake story about natural phenomenon that threatens to destroy the world and asks for his help. He explains how he already has a weapon ready but he's missing 25 crystals. Crash simply accepts as he doesn't want to lose his planet. He sets on the journey to collect the crystals. Along the way, he comes across plenty of enemies from the past. At the same time, Dr. Bryo, Cortex's right-hand man in the prior game, asks for Crash to also collect some colorful diamonds to act as an alternative source in case of Cortex's plans failed. The players are then tasked to complete 37 levels in order for Crash to reach Cortex and stop his evil plans, who is being revealed by Coco. Similar to the sequel, the third game also follows the story of the previous game with the fall of Cortex's laboratory pieces from space. A piece had fallen on an ancient temple and the spirit escapes, claiming now he is free. The daylight disappears as an evil atmosphere appears in the world. Aku Aku claims that Uka Uka has been freed and a terrible evil should fall in the land. Uka Uka's first act is to approach Cortex and punish him for failing him twice. Cortex begs for his forgiveness. Feeling generous for his freedom, he spares Cortex and introduces him to a new ally. Aku Aku explains how Uka Uka will abuse the time in order to see his plans through, and thus he teleports Coco and Crash on a time machine so that they will gather the crystals before Uka Uka. The three adventures in 38 levels in order to gather all the crystals. Once all the crystals are gathered and all the minions are defeated, Crash alongside Aku Aku face off Cortex and Uka Uka for one last epic battle. The game's story mode is simple, but yet again, when someone plays Crash Bandicoot, they might get frustrated with the levels and easily spend more than average time in order to proceed. If the story would fill with plenty of details, it would have been very easy to get lost and confused. Also, combining the story of the three games into one bigger story is a really nice way to tell a story. However, Crash Bandicoot games were never about the story, but more or less the frustrating gameplay. Crash Bandicoot games are notoriously known for being extremely difficult and punishing. Everything out there is made with one cause of killing poor little Crash. Crash is always placed in a hub world and walks around choosing levels for him to play. Each of the games has its own number of levels. Crash selects the level of preference and then drops onto the gameplay. The levels are filled with various of enemies that are capable of one-shotting Crash. At the same time, all of the maps have various of items that can also kill Crash. To elaborate, some levels have spikes, fire, electricity, crashing pillars, toxic waters, and plenty of others. Last but not least, in almost every map, there are never-ending holes that the player can drop in to their demise. At the same time, there are items that can help Crash in a way on his mission. All the maps have Wumba fruits. Collecting 100 Wumba fruits rewards Crash with 1 extra life and generally increases the overall score. The Wumba fruits can be found in the wild or within crates. There are various of crates with various of items. Some have fruits, some give extra lives, some summons Aku Aku, some are controllers that trigger events, and others are dangerous, such as TNTs. The player gets control of Crash or Coco. Crash moves around in a 3D environment with L3 or the keypad depending on the player's preference. Crash is capable of jumping with the usage of X. Tapping or holding X indicates the jumping's height. Jumping on a crate and pressing X at the time right before it smashes the box will allow Crash to reach higher heights. Square is the famous spin attack that Crash is very known for. Triangle, on the other hand, is simply used to bring out the status on the display. These are the main mechanics introducing Crash Bandicoot 1. The sequel and third game, however, have a few more abilities such as sliding. Spinning and pressing circle allows Crash to slide. Enemies hit during a slide will be knocked out. Moreover, jumping and pressing circle will cause for Crash to grab his legs and belly flop on the ground, stomping on every enemy. Running, sliding, jumping and pressing a circle will allow Crash to reach higher heights based on their speed, the known slide jump. The last available ability for the Bandicoots is the Wumba Bazooka. The player can aim it with L2 and shoot with R2. Aku Aku, as mentioned earlier, appears to help Crash. Whether obtained by a crate or simply obtained by dying multiple times, he appears next to the hero and acts as a second chance. Aku Aku has 3 forms: single, which acts as a second chance; double, which is represented by a brighter Aku and allows you to get 3 times; and the triple, which gives invincibility for Crash, similar to the famous star power found in Super Mario series. Once a level is cleared, the player can take on the level as a time trial to unlock a relic. During a time challenge, some crates have numbers on them representing the seconds the timer will be freeze for. Overall, Crash Bandicoot N.Sane Trilogy is a faithful remaster of the original trilogy of the 90s, 1996, 1997, 1998. The games seems to have aged well, and the remaster was well received from across the globe. The characters look polished and clean in comparison to their older counterparts. The level design is really good and very tricky. Everything is out to get Crash, and that can be seen everywhere within a certain level. There's plenty of funny animations triggered with the death of Crash for every possible death, whether it's fire, electricity, spikes, bees, anything. The levels themselves are different from each other and introducing new mechanics. Some of them are novel 3D platforming levels, some of them have Crash running towards the screen while a giant rock, bear or dinosaur is chasing him. Some have the players to choose path A or B, some have special items such as jetpacks, jet skis, and so on. Every level keeps the game fresh and new. The buttons respond to the player's input without an issue or delay. The game is as hard as the player's experience. Some will find it difficult, some will find it challenging, others will find it easy. It really depends on the player. Personally, I found the games 2 and 3 very easy, and for the first one, I only found difficult on a certain bridge level. You know the one, don't lie to yourself. The only time Crash Bandicoot became sort of a challenge for me outside of the bridge was getting the optional routes in order to get the reward of a gem. I never went for 100% completion, so I do not know if that is the reason why the games are really tough, or whether or not it was the PlayStation 2 era that made the graphics real weird. It took me about 16 hours to finish the trilogy, so it's around 5 hours each game. Ever since its release, the game has plenty of bundles for someone to purchase. It's either Crash, Crash with the card game CTR, Crash and Spyro the Reignited Trilogy, or all 3 in 1, Crash, Spyro and Crash Kart as a one bundle. If you want to know more about the other 2 games, Crash Kart and Spyro, check on my playlist or the links below. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe. Tell me your thoughts on Crash, which game you preferred either from the trilogy or in general. Till then, take care and I'll see you all in the next one. See ya!